Hello everyone and welcome back to Of Cryptids and Creatures, the show where I, a very tired college student, attempts to draw cryptids and creatures from Dungeons and Dragons and our own myths very poorly. I have no art training, but today's episode we're going to be talking about gelatinous cubes. Now that's honestly kind of a fun word to say, but gelatinous cubes are mindless cubes, so I kind of spruce up this drawing, and I'll tell you a little bit about the lore in that in a bit, but you'll see me drawing this kind of strange cube shape where I try to give it some depth by adding some weird objects that are floating inside it along with some bubbles, but we'll talk about that in a bit. You may be noticing that this clip is going a little faster than the last episodes did, and that is because I didn't realize that this was a very bad angle for the drawing I was doing. I ended up drawing it very small and you can't really see what's going on, so I've sped up this clip a lot faster than I do the other ones. That way we can get to a much closer shot where I'm lining and coloring things as usual, but I figured you still need to see this bit of the process, because otherwise it's kind of a waste of space, but it is badly filmed, and that's on me. Gelatinous cubes are a classic Dungeons and Dragons monster. They've been around since the 70s, and honestly, look at this little guy. Why wouldn't you want to keep him around? Gelatinous cubes are about 10 to 15 feet in size, but there are legends that they can get much bigger, and obviously you can do whatever you want with these things. They are not incredibly sentient. They are pretty much what they look like. They are transparent ooze that crawls around in dungeons and absorbs things. They're gatherers by nature, and any sort of organic material they tend to absorb. They are acidic in nature on the inside, and any sort of non-organic material eventually gets expelled, but that's why you see little things floating around in them, especially to warn other adventuring parties that something isn't quite right. They do absorb you alive, so don't get absorbed by one. That's my best advice, honestly, because you can't breathe in a cube of jello. I mean, in real life you can't do that either, but sentient jello, well, mildly sentient jello, you're screwed. As with any sort of non-solid object, these things can fit into different spaces and get right back into this cube shape that they started in. They tend to pick up pretty much anything in their path and leave behind a slightly slimy trail. So maybe next time when you're wandering in a dungeon, wonder why the floor's so clean. It's probably one of these guys. Now, I did say that these are a classic Dungeons and Dragons monster that have been around since the 70s, and you'll see that in other popular media. If you look to Disney's Onward, there's a scene with a gelatinous cube that is actually credited to Wizards of the Coast for letting them use it, and games like Minecraft have slimes that you can fight. So I just thought that was really fun. You'll see a lot of slime-like creatures on there thanks to this guy. I'm gonna draw your attention back to the drawing for one moment. You may notice between this clip and the last clip something slight changed. I went in and I messed with a few details, especially on that shield. I was not liking how it was looking. I'm still not super happy with how it turned out, but you'll see later I color over it and it does become kind of dark, so I guess it's okay where it's at, but definitely not my best shape. But you can see here, just like last time, I'm going in, making some lines darker, trying to give it a little bit of depth. Still working on how to show that depth. Drawing is complicated, and I don't know how to show things. I'm really good at thinking about things sonically, but I don't know, visuals sometimes elude me, so I'm just kind of going for it, going ham, having a fun time. You'll notice that I start going in with some grays and some darker colors. I color everything that's inside the cube first, because what ends up happening is I end up coloring over it, and that darkens the color and makes it seem like it's actually in something. Again, not super happy with how that shield looks, because now it just looks like a circle that I just markered in, but you live and you learn. As I've mentioned before, gelatinous cubes are incredibly ineffective when it comes to inorganic material, which is why there's stuff floating around in it in this drawing, but it is incredibly effective against organic material and cells because that's how it eats. They're omnivorous, and they're scavengers, so they get what they can, and they usually live in dark, dungeon-y places, which is exactly where you would expect them to be in a game like Dungeons & Dragons. But they do have a paralyzing substance that if you touch them will attempt to paralyze you so they can engulf you better, because, you know, it's a predator even though it doesn't have a mind, which, speaking of minds, since this thing is mindless, a lot of the spells and effects that some characters get to use in Dungeons & Dragons, if it affects its intelligence or just its mind in general, it doesn't have one, so those spells won't work. So keep those in mind if you're going against one of these oozy little guys next time in your party. Now you can see what's kind of happening is I went in with like this kind of cyan blue green sort of color, and I didn't like it. I wanted some sort of an ombre. I wanted some sort of thing that would make it look like it had depth and transparency, and I didn't like the blue. So I colored over it and made it like a darker blue-green, which I think turned out okay. And then I went in, and those white spots that I had saved for some sort of shine just didn't sit right with me, so I colored them in a light green, and then I kind of accented them again when I come in with this white pen that I so love to use. I just kind of highlight more of the highlights that I made. I think in retrospect I would have drawn those in last so there weren't lines surrounding them. I think it would have looked much better, much more organic, but you know, these are the things we learn from art as we do them, and I add in a couple more of these lines that definitely look better than the ones that have a black outline to them. And you'll see just here for the end that I go through again and I outline everything that I've either colored over or I think needs to pop more from the background, and that's it. This is the gelatinous cube that I've drawn with little coins and bones and arrows and shields and keys. But this has been Of Cryptids and Creatures. Thank you so much for watching.